Thanks so much for coming tonight. I'm Liz Hoddle, Director of Events at Politics and Prose, and it is such a privilege to welcome Senator Elizabeth Warren back to 6th and I. Politics and Prose is committed to creating community through productive and meaningful dialogue, and nowhere is that more evident than in our lasting partnership with 6th and I. In the past year, we've hosted Chimamanda Adichie, Megyn Kelly, Thomas Friedman, Trevor Noah, Jonathan Franzen, and Senator Cory Booker together, just to name a few. We strive to bring you the finest writers and the finest thinkers, and we are honored tonight to host Senator Elizabeth Warren for her new book, This Fight is Our Fight. Elizabeth Warren has committed her life to working and fighting for working families and for the middle class. In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, Senator Warren served as chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel for the Troubled Asset Relief Program. Her efforts to protect taxpayers, hold Wall Street accountable, and ensure tough oversight of the Bush and Obama administrations won praise from both sides of the aisle. Recognized as one of the nation's top experts on bankruptcy and the financial pressures facing working families, Senator Warren is credited for the original thinking, political courage, and relentless persistence that led to the creation. That's right. Thank you. I thought maybe you hadn't gotten that. That led to the creation of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Today, as a U.S. Senator, Warren is a member of the Senate Committees on Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, Health, Education, Labor and Pensions, Armed Services, and the Special Committee on Aging. She is the author of 10 previous books, including the nationally best-selling A Fighting Chance. Her new book, This Fight is Our Fight, is a call to action. In the New York Times, Paul Krugman called it a muscular, unapologetic book, and that's right. It relentlessly examines the reasons why the middle class is under siege and how we can and must fight to save it. It demands that we all pay attention. Senator Warren, we are here to tell you, we are listening and we are ready. Please help me in welcoming Senator Elizabeth Warren to 6th and I.
Thank you. Whoa, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you all. That's fabulous. Wow, a room full of people who like to come out and who like books and who are ready to get into a fight. I'm ready. This is fabulous. I am so glad that you are here tonight. What I thought I'd do is I'd read you some from the book and tell you a little bit about the argument in the book and read a little more and then take as many questions as we possibly can. I think you were asked to do questions on the way in, and we've got a whole stack of them, and I'll try to do as many as I can. I'm going to start in the middle of the book here. I want to start here in Washington. People often drop by our office in Washington. We get visits from folks who are in town from Massachusetts for a convention or a business trip or vacation. School groups or families on spring break come by. Some people come by to talk about a particular issue they care deeply about, the oceans, human trafficking, music education. Some people just want to say hello and stick a pin in the Massachusetts map near their hometown. And when I can, I have an open house. Now, visitors form a rough line. We shake hands. They tell me a little about their issues or themselves, and we usually take a picture together. We have done some killer selfies. We really have. Okay. At one of these gatherings, a nice couple stood first in line, holding hands. The guy was sturdy, about my height, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair. As I stretched out my hand, his face lit up with a broad smile. He wore a dark suit and a nice purple shirt and tie, but what caught me were his eyes, bright and engaged and completely locked on mine. "Hi, Senator," he began. "I'm Mike from Douglas, Massachusetts, and I have Alzheimer's." early onset. I'm 55. Soon, I will have forgotten this conversation. I will have forgotten everything. You, my children, my wife. His wife stood quietly as he paused, searching for words. Finally, he said, "Everything I know will be taken from me." And that was all it took. My eyes filled with tears, and I held my breath. How does anyone deal with that future? For an instant, the faces of those I love flitted across my mind. My grandchildren, my husband Bruce, my 3 brothers, and all those who'd already died. Daddy, Mother, Aunt Bee, our beloved dog Otis. Who would I be if I forgot them? Before I could recover enough to speak, Mike bounded on. I will have forgotten, so I'm here today while I can remember. I'm here to ask you to fight for more funding for research on Alzheimer's. Please, I'm going to forget, so I need you to remember. Now, I had walked into that room with my mind on some annoying paperwork, thinking ahead to my next meeting, and Mike had stopped me cold. His story was like a spear thrust between my ribs, reminding me that everything we do in Washington matters to real people, people who never planned to ask for help, but who needed it right now. Alzheimer's disease offers the perfect example of how foolish it is to shortchange investments in research. In 2016 alone, Americans spent $236 billion caring for people with Alzheimer's. That's $236 billion in 1 year just for care. All that money didn't delay the advance of that illness by a single day. And we will keep on spending these astronomical sums year after year. In fact, the amount will continue to grow so much that by 2050, Alzheimer's alone could bankrupt Medicare. We know that this financial tsunami is coming, and we've still got time to do something about it. So, how much does the NIH allocate to Alzheimer's research? In 2016, the amount spent on research was less than 0.5% of the money spent on care. Now, NIH isn't heartless or stupid. It just doesn't have enough funding. Even as the population ages and the number of diagnoses increases, Congress continues to cut research dollars. Medical research at the NIH now receives 20% less funding than just 10 years ago. And Alzheimer's isn't the only pressing medical concern. Think about the other diseases on the cusp of scientific breakthroughs, like diabetes, heart disease, breast cancer, and HIV. Think about kids with life-threatening allergies or autism. Think about people with ALS trapped in a non-responsive body until they suffocate. Think about people addicted to opioids and people in chronic pain. Think about how a single medical breakthrough could give new life to hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, I get worked up over this, but the way I figure it, we should all be worked up. It isn't just medical research. If our government had spent the same proportion of its 2016 budget on research that we spent back in the 1960s, we would have devoted an extra $162 billion to basic research in just 1 year. That would more than quintuple the budget for the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation combined. 5 times the funding. I want you to just think for a minute of the additional scientists and laboratories that would have been working hard to solve problems. Can you imagine how much further we'd be along on clean energy development?
or disease-resistant crops, or cheap ways to turn seawater into fresh drinking water. And if we made progress on just those 3 fronts alone, think how much more money we could save and how much better off our people and our planet would be. Today, only 2 out of every 11 research proposals that are finalists for research grants at the National Institutes of Health get funding. 2 out of 11. The NIH is leaving good science on the table because it is chronically short of money. 1 in 5 biochemistry research scientists admit that they are considering leaving the United States so they can continue their work. It is not an exaggeration to say an entire generation of young researchers is threatened with extinction or exile. Some of the work may migrate to another country, but much of the research that is desperately needed simply doesn't get done. I asked the director of the National Institutes of Mental Health what he could do with more funding, and he described how we are on the cusp of a revolution. He and other scientists believe that researchers are right on the edge of unraveling the most important puzzles about the brain. They believe that we are inches away from opening exciting new lines of treatment for mental illness, for Alzheimer's, for autism, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, psychosis, and schizophrenia. But there's a catch. Without government funding, those discoveries will be delayed by years, maybe decades. For me, this fight is about building a future. And this fight is also about Mike from Douglas, Massachusetts, because Mike is starting to have trouble remembering his wife and children. I want to say 2 things about that passage. The first one is that last Thursday night, I was at Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts. Got Holyoke grads, okay. I was at Mount Holyoke, and when I finished reading that passage, Mike and his wife Cheryl were there with us, and I asked him to stand. And he got this enormous standing ovation, people in tears, because they could look at the man I'm talking about here. And Mike is not here in Washington tonight, but it's the only way I know to say it's real people that are touched by every one of these decisions made in Washington. Every time we decide to cut a budget, every time we take research off the table, it touches the lives of real people. And I want to say one more thing, and that is that 5 weeks ago, President Trump put out his first version of the budget, and he proposed a massive $5.8 billion cut to the National Institute of Health. It would take away about 20% of their budget. Now, this book is about stories. It's about stories like Mike's. It's about a story about a woman named Gina, sort of your classic, middle class, went to college, got married, had 2 boys, worked, who now finds herself, boys are grown, and her husband, who's a roofer, his knees are starting to have trouble with his back. Gina has worked for several years now at Walmart. And I asked Gina, after telling a lot about her life story, what she'd built, how careful she'd been, does Gina think that she's still middle class? And Gina said, I don't think there is a middle class in America anymore. If there was, I wouldn't have to go to the food pantry at the end of every month. It's also a story about Kai. Kai, who headed off to college with a plan, not just a dream, but a plan. Kai was going to go into computers. and had a pretty well mapped out idea for how to do that, but got her feet tangled up with a for-profit college. And when I pick her up in the book, she's 27 years old, she has no diploma, she has $100,000 in student loan debt, and she's working as a waitress. It's about another Michael, in Chicago, who worked hard all his life. And when the crash of 2008 came, first he lost his house, then he lost his job. He describes the crash as it broke my heart. So the people in this book are the ones who try to give voice, who try to make real these policies that we make in Washington, these big decisions we make about the direction that our country will go, the direction that our government will go. So for a minute, I thought what I'd do is I want to tell you the basic argument, at least part of the argument of the book. And that is I want to start with some numbers, some facts. I actually believe facts are important. I know. Makes me a little edgy, a little edgy, but facts are important. Now, these will not be those alternative facts that you have read so much about. I have to say, it never occurred to me we were going to have to find adjectives for describing facts. Like the facts I want to talk about are going to be the facty facts, the really facts, okay? But I do want to tell. And so here's the story I want to tell you about. This is going to be a story that goes from 1935 to the present. That's going to be the timeline, 1935 to 1916. And the first thing I want you to lock into your brain about this, because I'm not doing a fancy PowerPoint, is that I will act out the PowerPoint. It'll be like interpretive dance. Right? I can do this. I can so do this, right? Watch me do a graph. Right? Anyway, so here's the first fact I want you to lock in your mind. 1935 to 2016, basically, with few exceptions, GDP, how rich we're getting, how much we're producing, kind of goes up every year. It's just a nice, steady line up, right? That's going to be the first part, 1935 to 2016. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this story into two time periods, and I'll break it at 1980. Not everything's perfect around that time, but it'll give us an idea of how to work with it. Okay, so 1935 to 1980, what happens in America? And the answer is, what happens in America is we work on how to build opportunity. How to build opportunity. And you know how we do it? We do it with two principal tools. The first one, cover the children's ears, because it's a nasty word, is we regulate. No, we really do. We do things like we enforce antitrust regulations, so big guys don't get to roll over little businesses before they can get started. We put a cop on the beat on Wall Street, right, to try to keep it level out there. Whoa. We regulate the biggest financial institutions, right? You want to be a bank? There's going to be some regulation around that. Made it safe to put money in bank, but banks became regulated businesses. Okay, so part one is we regulate, and part two, progressive taxation. We taxed those at the top, and we use that money to invest in building opportunities, more opportunities. How do we do it? We invested in education, big time. GI Bill to thank returning soldiers from World War II. We invested in public education, K through 12. We invested in state universities. Why do we make all these investments in education? Because we believe that if you got an education, you could do anything. God, we believed that. We invested in infrastructure. Roads, national highway transportation system, bridges, power to rural America. Why? Because we didn't know what the next great business would be, but we were pretty darn sure you'd need electricity, right? And pretty darn sure you'd need roads. so that you could get your goods to market, so that your workers could get to you. So we made those investments together so those good businesses could grow here in America and those good jobs could grow here in America. And the third thing we did, God, this is what made us such a remarkable people. We invested in research. We put money into medical research and scientific research and engineering research and behavioral sciences research, all kinds of research. Why? Because we believed in the future. We didn't even know what that research was going to produce. We didn't know, but we believed that if we built this giant pipeline of ideas, that things would come from that would permit our children and grandchildren to live lives that we had never even dreamed of. So we made those investments, and here's the deal. It worked. I mean, it worked. It still gives me goosebumps how much it worked. I'll tell you how much it worked. It worked so much that the 90% of America, everybody outside the top 10%, the upper middle class, the working poor, and the poor, together got 70% of all the income growth in that time period. Okay, the rich did better, I get it. But 70%, and here's the thing, when you really scratch through the data, it's all the way. It's every decile, all the way. Everybody did better. The pie got bigger and everybody got more to eat. Now look, we weren't perfect, not by any stretch. The black-white wealth gap was there from the first time we measured, with African Americans held firmly at the bottom. But here was the deal. America was so committed just to the basic notion of opportunity that we made changes. And in the civil rights era, in the 1960s and 1970s, the black-white wealth gap shrank by 30% in about a 15-year period. So we weren't there, not by any stretch, but we were on a road. And then we hit 1980. Ronald Reagan, trickle-down economics, deregulate, turn the banks loose to do whatever they want to do, stop enforcing or slow down on enforcing the antitrust laws. Oh, and that stuff about taxes. Cut taxes for those at the top. And when you cut taxes for those at the top, all those investments in education, in infrastructure, in basic research start shrinking up. And that is exactly what we did. And here's the deal. GDP keeps going right on up, goes up across both time periods. GDP keeps going up. So how did the 90% do? From 1980 to 2016, the answer is the 90%, everybody outside the top 10%, got nothing. None of the new income growth. Zip. Nearly 100% of the new income growth in America from 1980 to 2016 has gone to the top 10% in this country. Think about that. And the black-white wealth gap in that period of time has tripled. Yeah, that's what trickle-down has done for African American families. And look, there are people who will readily point out, whoa, but there's a whole lot more food stamps than there used to be. Yeah, and more rent subsidies, true. But this is about people who want a chance to earn a living. People who want to be able to build something for themselves. People who want to be able to get out there and work and have some security and be able to build for themselves and for their kids. And that part is just gone. And now here comes the real twist to the knife. It didn't have to happen. It didn't happen that the middle class started doing really, really badly and working families across the spectrum started doing really badly, because of gravity. That damn gravity will get you every time, It's like you go up, but then you gotta come back down, Nope, no. Country keeps getting richer. And it didn't happen because of technology, and it didn't happen because of competition internationally. You gotta keep your eye on that very first stat. We're getting richer. Richer. The difference is what's happening, who's getting to participate in the richness. No, the story I tell in this book about what happened, why it changes between time 1 and time 2, is basically that a bunch of billionaires and corporate CEOs decided to invest billions of dollars in making sure that Washington worked well for them. They made that investment and it paid off. And that's what we see in the data from 1980 on forward. So the way I see it, this book is a story about good and evil. I have a point of view. Yeah. I am unapologetic about that. It is a story about right and wrong. It is a story about monumental fights. It is a story about billionaires and giant corporations and their buddies in Washington. And it is also a story about Mike from Douglas, Massachusetts, and Kai and Gina and the other Michael. So, let me go back and read you a little bit more from this book. Trump and his team seem to believe that government is the enemy and that poor, beleaguered giant corporations should be turned loose to do whatever they want. Break the economy, poison the water, cut cozy private deals with Russia, refuse to pay people for the hours they work. Trump and his team have the power to destroy much of what is left of America's middle class. They have the power to extinguish the hope that our children, all of our children, will have a chance to grow up and do better than their parents. There's a lot of tough stuff in this book, and I make it clear that I wrote this book in part because I am worried that Trump is now poised to deliver the knockout blow to the middle class. And I want to make a point here and focus this down. This is not about what Donald Trump says. This is not about Donald Trump's 3 in the morning tweets. This is about what Donald Trump does. What Donald Trump and his Republican friends in Congress are doing to this country right now. Here we are. We haven't even hit the 100-day mark yet. And I just want to mention just a few of these. Donald Trump has already signed off on a law to make it easier for government contractors to steal employees' wages. He has already signed off on a law to make it easier for companies that kill or maim their employees to keep it hidden. He has already signed off on a law to make it easier for investment advisors to cheat retirees. And I gotta tell you, for me, Trump Care said it all. It was like the microcosm. When Donald Trump and the Republicans came together to say, here's how we're gonna improve healthcare in America. We're gonna knock 24 million people off healthcare coverage. We're gonna raise costs for a whole bunch of people in the middle class, but we're gonna give a tax break to a handful of millionaires and billionaires. Is there anyone in America who thought, man, what we really need to get our healthcare system working again is a tax break for millionaires and billionaires? And yet, that has been the signature piece of the first 100 days. Trump and his Republican buddies are delivering one gut punch after another to middle-class families, and that is exactly why I am here to fight back. It's why I'm here to fight back. That's it. You bet. You bet. So, now wait. We got more. So I want to take you to a place near the end of the book. And it's near the end of the book in part because I would still be writing this book every day. But I want to tell you kind of how I tried to pull this together. And what it starts with, this section near the end, is it starts with, I watched Donald Trump be inaugurated. I went to the inauguration. I wanted to go. I really did. I wanted it burned into my eyeballs. You bet. You know, it's like if there was ever a moment when I was going to say, oh, God, this is hard, I just close my eyes and say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm in this. So the next day is the day of the Women's March. Anybody in here go to the Women's March? Yes. Woo! Yes. You guys go to the Women's March? Yes. Good. Wow, we got a lot. Yes. Woo! Okay. So it's the next morning, and I went to the Women's March. I didn't go to the Women's March here in Washington. I went to the Women's March back in Boston. And so I'm thinking about this. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I'm really into this. And I'm thinking, how are we going to fight back? I get it. Democrats are in the minority in the House. We're in the minority in the Senate. Very limited tools to fight with. And I'm thinking, we got to have an army. We got to raise an army. What does an army look like in a democracy? So here's where I pick up. By now, we were 8 or 10 blocks from Boston Common, where the march would begin. And that was when I got my first glimpse of our army. The sidewalks were full of people hurrying toward the Common. Women in pink pussy hats, you bet. Men pushing strollers, looking very debonair. Kids laughing and running. And I saw a little girl riding on her father's shoulders while clutching a hand-lettered sign that read, "I fight like a girl." Me too, sweetie. Boy. So, as we rounded the corner, I looked down at the massive crowd, and there was an ocean of signs, colorful, clever, creative. You know, I'm going to read you just 4 of them. I have actually more in the book, but I love the signs. I'm so into the signs now. So, this is my first protest, but not my last. I love that sign. There's another sign. Guy standing there holding a sign. It's like from a broken down cardboard box that he's torn apart. I mean, like he was totally into this. And it said, "Not usually a sign guy." But geez. Women's rights are not up for grabs. And Donald, you ain't seen nasty yet. So, yes. We weren't fully organized yet, but the power was there. The energy was everywhere. On a cold, bright Saturday morning, something special was happening. Every step brought us closer together. Everyone on Boston Common, everyone in Washington, everyone in little towns and big cities across America and around the world. We talked and held signs that pointed to many different paths, but all those paths pointed toward building opportunity, not just for some of our people, but for all of them. And our very act of marching delivered the loudest possible proclamation of our deep down, unshakable belief that we can make democracy work again by insisting that this government serve the people. We are an army filled with optimism and hope and fierce determination. That's what we are. You bet. Yeah. As I marched in Boston with tens of thousands of others that day, I had no illusions. I knew it would be a hard fight. I knew there would be dark moments, but I knew that we had tens of millions of people with us, and this fight would be our fight. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to do this. You bet. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love it. Yes. Oh, gosh. I was afraid Donald Trump had sent someone over. Okay. Oh, that's good, that's good. Whoa, I'm like louder. Okay. All right. Okay, Liz, there you are. Wow, okay. Let's do this. We're going to get some great questions.
What are your ideas to help alleviate student loan debt, private and federally funded? The heavy burden of those monthly payments, which we all know about, can stunt growing the middle class, and not only undergraduate, but graduate loans as well.
Okay, so this is a great question, and I want to start with something about why this is really deeply personal for me. I grew up in a family with a whole lot of financial ups and downs. My dad had a lot of different jobs. In a bad space, we lost our family station wagon. We nearly lost our home. I listened to my mother cry every night because she thought it was gone. And we kind of evened out on that, but by the time I was graduating from high school, there was no money for college. There's no money even for college applications. I got a scholarship. I was a debater, still shows. I was a debater, got a debate scholarship. I got married young, dropped out of college. Oh, so smart. But I got my chance, and my chance was a $50 a semester commuter college in Texas. Yeah. And the way I look at this is I am the daughter of a janitor who ended up as a professor at Harvard Law School and a United States Senator because America invested in educating children. And I am deeply grateful, and that gets me up every day. Every day. And now let me just say it the other way. That opportunity is not out there anymore. Today, 70% of young people graduating from public universities have to borrow money to get there. And boy, here's the twist of the knife. The United States government is making a profit, billions of dollars in profits off student loans. That is obscene, and we must change it. It's just wrong. So here's how I think of this. This is why I talk about policy. This is why it matters so much. So the very first bill that I introduced to the United States Senate, very first one, is to cut the interest rate on student loans, right? Just to say, that's it. We got to at least bring it down. Do not make a profit. In fact, I was being just a little cheeky. I said, how about if we charge students the same amount that we're charging JP Morgan Chase and Citibank when we lend them money? So anyway, ultimately we go through all this, but here's the problem. Because the United States government is making profits off these student loans, they've already been budgeted.
So all those profits have already been built into the budget. So in order to push this bill through, what I had to do was come up with a way to pay for it. You actually have to pay to get rid of those profits, right? To balance out those profits. So what I did is I proposed basically the Buffett Rule, right? Only millionaires and billionaires, but they would have to pay taxes. Now, pull out your violins. They would have to pay taxes at least at the same rate that middle-class families pay. And think about I know that is so sad. So sad. But if they did that, if they just paid it just the rate where middle-class families pay, there would be more than enough money to drop the interest rate on student loans like a rock. And you know, a little bit more, and we could actually put more money into our state universities. We could actually bring down the cost of college for everyone, because it's both halves. You need to work on the cost of college and the student loans. So anyway, the way I see this is there it is right in front of us. America's going to spend the money one way or the other. We can spend it on tax breaks for the richest among us, or we can spend that very same money on opening the door for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are just trying to get a start, just trying to make something of their lives. This kind of choice, this is a choice about our values. It's a statement of who we are as a people. And there was a time in America where the answer to that was really easy. We make the investment in our kids. We make the investment in our future. And unfortunately, today there is a time when that answer is already out there and locked in. And it's locked in with a whole bunch of people in Washington who say, you've not only got to protect those at the top, the job we've got to do is that we got to give more taxes, more tax cuts to those at the top. So I say this by way of saying, look, I am in this fight all the way, but this is one of those, it is the core kind of fight. It's the one that goes into who are you fighting for here? Which side do you stand on? Did you come to Washington to help the rich and the powerful get a little richer and a little more powerful, or did you come to Washington to work for the people? And I think the only way we are going to make the change we need to make, the way we are going to make sure that everyone in this country can get an education without getting crushed by student loan debt, is it's going to take all of us rising up. It's going to take democracy. It's going to take all of us saying we are in this fight. We are in this fight, and we want to know from every one of our senators and every one of our representatives where you stand on this. We push this issue forward, we will win on this one. It's going to take time, but we are going to do this one. We must do this one.
Thank you. In the last election, Clinton offered an economy that works for all, but the only specific action she spoke about was infrastructure spending. Trump offered multiple specific actions: cancel the TPP, renegotiate NAFTA, trade barriers, deport immigrants taking our jobs. What specific actions will Democrats offer to increase manufacturing jobs and stop loss of jobs out of the USA?
So look, I'm actually going to challenge a little bit the premise of the question here. So whoever asked the question, I'm coming back at you. I actually don't think the problem in this last election was somebody had a better list than somebody else. I really think the problem is we got to stand up and say what we're going to fight for. Now, I don't kid myself. Listen, I tangled mightily with people in my own party, including my own president, over trade issues. And I still think I was right. I do. And we can talk about those because I think they're really important. But I think the question of how we build jobs in the middle class here in America, I want to describe it slightly differently because it's something I talk about a lot in this book. It's how you filter everything. It's not one decision. It's 1,000 decisions. It's 1,000,000 decisions. And the question is, are you filtering every single thing that comes your way through the lens of the lobbyists and the campaign contributors and the bought and paid for experts and the think tanks with the shadowy funding and the advertising? Is it filtered through where money makes sure that its point of view is always, always, always represented in the room? Or is it filtered through what it takes for working people to be able to make it? I mean, look at the one on education. I'm really serious about this. Look at the one we were just talking about on education. How does anybody go home and explain to their constituents that I just voted to keep a giant tax break in place for a bunch of rich people, but not to worry because it'll come out the same on the budget because we're going to make the money up off the backs of a bunch of kids who couldn't afford to go to college without borrowing money. So yeah, you know what I think this is about? I think it's about educating people so that we have, our best asset is a workforce. So you make the investment in education. You make the investment in 21st century infrastructure right here in America. We are making such a mistake, and I talk about this in the book a lot, about how other countries are making the investments in infrastructure. Every time China makes an investment in infrastructure, the Europeans are ahead of us in making investments in infrastructure. Every time they do that, they're investing in good jobs in their countries. They are making it easier for businesses to locate there and workers to get back and forth to work and goods to be able to move around. That is part of it. Trade policy, you bet it's about trade policy. It's about trade policy that isn't just written by and for the top corporations in the country. It's about trade policy that has real representation for unions, for workers, for environmentalists, for people who care about what happens in this country, so that we design that trade policy so that it works for us and works for jobs here, and the investments in research. You know why other countries are trying to poach our researchers? It's not because they're committed to expanding knowledge in the world. Oh, I'm sure there's one or two people who care about that. I'm serious. They want to poach our researchers because they recognize that when you come up with good ideas and you build them, that all kinds of amazing things come from that. You build whole industries out of it. You know, right now, the latest data show that every dollar that NIH spends immediately results in about $2.25, roughly about that much, in just other immediate economic activity. Play it out when nanotechnology comes out of our labs, when the basic science behind GPS comes out of our labs. They're poaching it because they understand that this is how you build a dynamic future. A dynamic future not for a bunch of people right up at the top who just sit around and invest. A dynamic future for the people who get out and actually do the work. So the thing about it is, it's not like it's a secret what it takes to build a dynamic economy. It's not a secret what it takes to build good jobs. What it takes is it takes some political courage to say no to the rich and powerful. We're building a country that works for the rest of us. That's what it takes. That's what it takes.
My dad is in the financial sector and says he will vote Republican if you run for higher office.
Okay, that's one.
He's a Democrat. He voted for Jimmy Carter in 1980, so he's pretty far left.
He hadn't voted for a Democrat since Jimmy Carter?
Yeah. How do I convince him that you won't destroy his job?
So look. You know, actually, here's the thing. I get it. There are folks on Wall Street who say, oh my God, you're going to take away everything I'm doing. And I always say, only if you're lying and cheating. business model, then you are in trouble. If you're, you should be. You should be in trouble, right? If your whole business model is, I know what let's do. Let's sell people mortgages that are designed to blow up. You know, like, let's sell people grenades with the pins already pulled out, right? And then let's make more money boxing those up and selling them to municipalities so it'll blow big things up when it happens. And ultimately blew up the whole economy. Now look, the reason I say this is because, yes, we need a financial sector. Of course we need a financial sector. But the financial sector needs rules. Rules are what keeps markets working. You know, let me start with Teddy Roosevelt, okay? And I talk about this a little bit in the book. The whole idea, if you let the giants completely dominate and do whatever they want to do, the market actually ultimately collapses. And I'll make the same point at kind of even a larger scale. If we keep rolling over America's middle class, America's working families, that great dynamic engine that has pulled our economy decade after decade, consumer spending, people who get up and go to work every day and earn paychecks and then go spend those paychecks, that's kind of been how about 70% of our economy has worked. That just goes away. So what I want, this really is the case. I don't want to punish. I just want a set of rules so we have a level playing field. I just want a set of rules so that nobody can steal your purse on Main Street, but nobody can steal your pension on Wall Street, right? It's that same kind of idea. And can you make a good living out of that on Wall Street? You bet you can make a good living out of that. In fact, you might make a better living out of it in the long run. And that's what we got to do. We got to have a financial sector that's there to serve our economy, that's robust, that's strong. But it will be strong if there's a fair set of rules, everybody's playing by the same set of rules. And ultimately, it doesn't crash our economy. By the way, look at the pictures in this book. There's me at 19. Yeah. It really was an embarrassment. But among the pictures in the book, I just want to say this really quickly, just because you raised it in this, is that America was once a boom and bust economy. And it starts in the 1790s. And the economy explodes. I start with a little in the picture. And about every 20 years, you watch the economy, and what happened is it would explode. Then it would kind of start coming back, and there would be, and people would get together, right, and there'd be some investment again, and the economy would go up, and then it would overheat, and then it would explode again. And the problem was that when it exploded, it didn't just take down the risk takers. It took down farmers, and it took down workers, and it took down small businesses, along with the speculators on Wall Street. That happened about every 20 years until 1930. And when the big one came in 1930, Franklin Roosevelt said, in effect, in 1933, as a country, we can do better. We can put some basic rules in place. They're not very complicated. They're not too onerous. We can put some basic rules in place, and we can buy some economic peace. And that's what we did. We built an SEC. That just meant put a cop on the beat. We did FDIC insurance, make it safe to put money in banks, right? We made Glass-Steagall. We separated ordinary, boring banking, the kind that you had to protect all the time, from high-risk speculation on Wall Street. We made those three changes. We started enforcing the antitrust laws a little more vigorously. You know what it did? It bought us economic peace, basically until 2008. That's what it did. And you know what? During that time, America got richer, families got richer, and even Wall Street got richer. We just need some rules. That's what this is about. We got to have some basic rules to make this economy work for everyone, and that includes making Wall Street work so it works the economy for everyone. That's what it is.
Senator Warren, this is a question from Andrew from Virginia, but I suspect it speaks for many people in this room. Are we going to be okay?
Sure. Look, this is really scary. And the reason it is really scary is it's scary at multiple levels. It's scary because the punches are coming harder economically, and the 90% is we have far less to fall back on. It's like we're closer and closer and closer to the edge of a cliff. It's scary because the world out there is scary. I'm now in armed services, and I get lots of briefings, and I'm sleeping a lot less. It's scary because of our Earth. I'm going to say another really shocking thing. I believe in science. And so it's coming at us. It's coming at us hard. It's coming at us fast. And with Donald Trump in the White House and Republicans in the majority in the House and the Senate who do not seem inclined to try to rein him in any way, this is scary. And so this is why I am so into this fight and try to get as many people into this fight as possible. This is why I wrote the book and why the book is called This Fight is Our Fight. Because we're down to the short strokes here. And we don't have a majority on our side in the House or the Senate. We can't stop him. There's some things we can stop. But as you saw with Gorsuch, they can just change the rules. Once they've got the majority, they decide what it is they want to do with it. Our chance, our only chance, is democracy. It's all the people who stand up and make their voices heard. It is all the people who stood up over health care and said, no, that is not who we are. We can do better than that. It is all the people who made their voices heard. We got to win on health care. We really did. And it wasn't because we had more votes somehow in the House and Senate. We got the win because of what people did all across this country. So this book ultimately, this question, my answer to this question, is ultimately one of optimism. Because it says what's on the line here is democracy. What are we going to do with this country? Are we going to be a country that's just going to sit by and say politics is what we do once every 4 years? We're just going to start speculating now about the next round of the presidential? Or in once every 2 years because we'll pick up on the Senate and House races? Or are we a country that has made a change, a country that changed on the day of the Women's March, when we stood up and said, we get it. We got to be active right now, today. We cannot wait. I am scared about what Donald Trump will do between now and 3 a.m. And that means we've all got to be in this fight right now, all the way. It is our only chance. So when she asks me, are we going to be okay? The real answer is, if we all hang together and we all get in the fight, yes, we will be okay. We will be okay. But that's the only way. That's the only way. It's what it's going to take.
This is a follow-up to that question and will be our last question.
Oh, okay, last question.
Okay, so it's an important one. What advice do you have, what specific advice for ordinary yet alarmed citizens?
Good, my favorite kind of people. Hey, look, if you're not alarmed, you're not paying attention. Okay, so I got a lot of stuff in here about this, but let me just do some highlights here. And I'll do 3, because you can always tell a school teacher, right? Okay. There will be a quiz at the end. Have we got any school teachers in here? Yeah. Oh, all right. Yes. Okay. All right. The first thing that we have to do is you got to get in the fight. And I really mean that. This is one of those things. Join up. Join a group. And if you belong to one group, think about belonging to even 2 or 3. And there's a reason for this. I'm quite specific about this. One voice is loud, and that's good. Raising your voice is good. But 2 voices is actually more than twice as loud. And 10 is more than 10 times as loud. And 100 is a whole bunch more than that. And 1,000, and 10,000, and 100,000, and 1,000,000. Wow. Because being part of a group is how we help each other, how we help each other stay engaged, how we help each other know where the fight is. You know, we did a fight on healthcare, and that meant for a while, we're keeping the other issues kind of going, but we got focused because the groups were saying, hey, healthcare's coming up, we got to do this, and they were passing out information and coming up with ideas. This is how we engage. So part of it is join a group. Get on a group that you like. You can belong to more than one so that your voice will join with those of others. And your cool ideas for how to get engaged can be shared with tens and hundreds and thousands and millions of other people. So that's number 1. Number 2, don't shoot at everything that moves. Not in a world of Donald Trump. No, I mean, we got to learn this lesson, right? Donald Trump is the master of distraction, right? Whatever you're talking about. I watched this right after the election, and we were starting to get some traction on the whole issue. This is way back in November. And we were starting to get some traction around the issue of what had happened with Russia. It was just starting to come out. And I thought, wow, we're going to start talking about this. And the next thing that happens, I'm not kidding you, next day, Donald Trump says, people voted, Massachusetts people went across the border and voted illegally in New Hampshire. And the press goes, sing, you know, and that's all anybody wanted to talk about, was a real legal vote. Let it go. It's just not worth it. And this goes back to a point, it's not what Donald Trump says anymore. It's what he does. The way we will hold him accountable is that we will stay focused and we will stay on what he does. So when we're talking to people about it, we have something specific to talk about. And that, I think, is a very, very critical part of it. So let me say another one about what to do. The third one, I'm going to do 4 here. The third one is at no extra charge. The third one on this, I shouldn't say I'm going to do 4 before I get there. The third one on this is recruit. You got to recruit. We cannot just talk to each other. Okay, it's fun sometimes, or not, because you just get so excited sometimes. But we got to reach out to other people. So talk to your sister. Talk to your mom. Talk to your brother-in-law. Talk to your funny, crazy uncle, right? Yeah, we all got him. Talk to the person standing behind you in line while you're getting a sandwich. Don't be creepy, but but talk to them. No, I'm dead serious. We have got to reach outside. Why did the assault on healthcare fail? In part because it wasn't just Democrats fighting back. It was independents, it was Republicans, it was people who hadn't been very political before. So make that a part of what you're committed to do. And let me make a suggestion on that. Find an issue that you can talk about in a way that doesn't just start out with, the guy you voted for is really stupid. Not gonna work. Not going to work. Talk about student loans, right? Talk about a piece that really matters to you. Okay, so recruit. And the last thing I want to mention just on this one is commit. And I really mean that when I say commit. You got to commit to do something every single day. And you make the commitment. It's yours. It's like moral things are. It matters to you, not to anybody else. Whether it's make a phone call every day, send an email every day, promise to talk to one new person every day. Lots of suggestions. But at the end of the day, this really is the fundamental question. And that is, how committed are you to having the kind of country that really does create opportunity, not just for those at the top? The kind of country that truly does invest in building a future. And if you really are committed to that, then you will live that commitment every single day, a little piece of who you are and what you do. So, since this is my last question, let me just wrap this up by saying, first of all, how glad I am that all of you are here. I really do appreciate it. I'm glad that you care about these issues and that you're looking for ways to get more involved in this fight and to be more effective in this fight. But I also want to say, this is our moment in history. It is not the one that we thought it would be. It is not the one that any of us had dreamed about. But this is the moment we are called to. And the question will be, going forward, what kind of a people we are and what kind of a country we will build. And the way I see this one is this is about the character of our nation. And the character of a nation is not the character of its president. It is the character of its people. It is an honor to fight alongside you. Thank you.
Thank you.